Yo, this hot, this the spot, there it is pod.com. We're interviewing the best comedians, so tune in quick and get your ears receiving them. We talking about life and life to stream right to you, from the microphone right to your home, dude. Side note, this might get embarrassing, but no, don't sweat, yo, cause there it is.
Welcome to the There It Is podcast, a podcast for people interested in creating comedy. I'm your host, Jason Farr. Let's do this. Thanks so much for being here. Hope you're enjoying this funky theme music. Oh, yeah. It is the funkiest theme song in all of comedy podcasting. Today's episode is a great one. It's with the fantastic Molly Gaebe of UCB in New York. She is really great. She's on a Harold team there and a sketch team, and she does a lot of stuff. You should listen to this episode if you want to know more about how to perform a Harold on UCB levels. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I sure did. We have our first Thanksgiving episode just last week. First Christmas episode coming up near Christmas in about a month. Looking forward to all the episodes. If you're enjoying these episodes that you've listened to up to this point, then please leave a review on iTunes. Subscribe to us on iTunes or SoundCloud. If you've never heard an episode before, check them out. They're on iTunes and SoundCloud. You can also go to thereitispod.com and find old episodes. Well, this episode, as I said, is a great one, Molly Gaebe. It's a real great talk. She's a lot of fun. Let's get right to it. Here's my chat with Molly Gaebe. You know, I don't know where you're from. Where are you from?
I am from the 305, where Pitbull is from, Miami, Florida.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I know,
That's
it's bizarre.
Cool. When did you first get into performance art or like performing?
I guess I first really got into it. Well, I guess I went to a magnet school for middle school and did theater there. And that's where I first got exposed to improv. For our audition, we had to improvise a scene. And that was so much fun. And so ever since then, I've been pursuing that through high school. College is when I really started diving in at Wesleyan University. Lin-Manuel, what's up?
Oh, very cool. Who else went there? Didn't
Joss Whedon,
did
Michael
Jon Stewart
Bay
go there? Was that where Jon Stewart went?
Nobody should have. He's got the same Wesleyan flair.
Maybe I'm thinking William and Mary. I don't know.
Yeah, William and Mary and Wesleyan and Wellesley often get confused for each other. So yeah, every alum is
W's.
Yeah, exactly. But Wesleyan had a thriving improv scene, and I joined by accident one of the long form groups there. I didn't know the difference between long form and short form.
Right.
But
no one does in college.
Force. I know. My group was called New Teen Force, and I joined it. The deciding factor was on like who had the cuter boys, and it really just led me to where I am today.
You think UCB has the cuter boys? That's what is that what you're trying to say?
That's debatable. I mean, they're wonderful. Every theater has wonderful, beautiful boys. I love them all. But yeah, that's where I learned about
penitentiary theater. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my God. So we traveled to different the National College Comedy Improv Festival at Skidmore every year, which just was the best thing in the entire world. And that's where I learned how to do long form. And I still do some improv with some Wesleyan alums today. A lot of them are in New York, which is really fun.
That's very cool.
Then I went to Boston after that, where I had many panic attacks post-college, but many wonderful classes at Improv Asylum. I don't know if you've ever been.
I haven't.
It's great. I love it. So I trained there. Oh, and then I totally missed. I did some training for an entire summer at Improv Olympic in Chicago and Second City. The year before I could drink, which was unfortunate, but still had a good time.
So you got really committed really early.
I guess. Is that early? Sometimes I see 18-year-olds in 401s and I get really jealous.
Oh, yeah, right. But I just mean you got into performance in middle school.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's
Uh,
very neat.
yeah. I was really, really lucky to have access to those programs in Miami. It had like a thriving theater scene, which I'm not sure if it does anymore, but I was there at the right time. So yeah, I was lucky that way.
What
But
made you really lean in on that at such an early age?
my therapist will tell you it was because I had to mediate the tension in my family. But I think it's just because I wanted attention, like every other improviser.
Are
It's
you a
just so
middle child?
I am a middle child,
Yeah.
so hardcore. The most middle child you can get. Yeah.
Okay. Well, very fun, very cool that you found that at such a, I mean, some people don't find, I guess, something that inspires them so much until they're full on adults.
Yeah. It's really true. I found that making big scenes in public got me a lot of attention, and that felt good. So, on a smaller scale, that's what improv is on the stage. That's still very much my style to this day. So it's definitely comes from that. But the community and the people and the cute boys is what keeps me coming back, Jason. I tell you.
No, I get it. You have some roots in the Chicago style of improv, and which is a lot of people, when they talk about improv, I'm guilty of this on this podcast and elsewhere, of being one of those idiots who will say, like, there's Chicago style and there's New York style. And New York comes from Chicago. So it's just, there are different ways, and there are all these different theaters and different approaches, and it's all beautiful and great, and it's a mosaic of improv, and I like that.
That's very nice of you to say. That is wonderful. I love that sentiment.
Yeah, and it's great because I knew about improv when I was in high school, just like everyone else. We saw Whose Lines It Anyway? And when I got to college, that's what I knew was short form. I didn't know it was called that. And I read Truth in Comedy, but I was still just doing what we were doing in class, which was just short form. And it wasn't until 6 or so years ago that I was watching Ass Cat on Netflix where I said, I want to do that. I want to do that. So I love everything. I'm very inspired by IO people. I'm very inspired by UCB people. And that's why I have you on the podcast, because since the moment I saw you, I was like, she is phenomenal. I need to see more of her stuff. So I was glad a month ago when we went to New York that we got to see you.
Oh, I was so happy you guys came. That was really wonderful.
Super fun. And I was just having a conversation earlier today because we're at the end of our festival down here, which I hope one day you can make it to the New South Comedy Festival.
Oh, would love to.
Yeah.
I'll be.
This is my last one for a while living here, but if you come down here, then I'm gonna have to take a trip to see you. But I'm wondering, I've had this kind of conversation of like, yeah, I feel like I'm maybe more in my abilities, a IO type of thinker, but I want to be good at UCB style. As someone who's been in IO and you're successful in UCB, is there really that much difference?
You know what? There is, but I'm glad you mentioned that because I definitely consider myself more of an IO style player. That's why I feel like it's been so good for me to get my training at UCB because the game machine doesn't come so naturally to me. So having to practice that over and over and over again has made me into the kind of performer that I am. I'm definitely more like weight and heat character based and very physical. And a lot of my characters just come from the way I walk first, and then after that, the scene goes from there. So it's honestly just been like class for me, like practice. And I'm still taking classes because I want to remember to always go back to the basics of the game work. So that definitely does not come naturally to me. But like any performer, you need to practice all aspects of the art form.
I think that's one of the things that I like so much about you is that you're rooted in all these different things. So you're good at all these different things. You're great at the game aspect because I've seen you do it, but then the first show I saw you in, you were very physical. And it was the funniest stuff. I don't know if you remember at NCCAF and you're doing the big balloon thing that's outside of like every car dealership.
The car balloon man, yeah. That was so fun. Yeah, that's pretty much the epitome of what I do on stage, which is why I love being on the team that I'm on now and many of the teams that I've been on in the past. You need a well-rounded team. If you had 8 of me on one team, God, the show would be a disaster. You need, which is why I've definitely come to appreciate the art of curating an improv team to have each of the aspects that you need well taken care of. So like on the Harold team I'm on right now, women and men, we've got like the bizarro character players. Me and Sarah Grace, the other girl on the team, are very, very much dive into those. I mean, everybody can do everything, but we got the master justifiers like Zach and Steve,
Like
and
the
then the
straight
Gaebe
person and the
machine.
absurd person.
Yeah, exactly. So when you have a good balance of that, that really magic really happens.
Absolutely.
So a lot of my training too has gotten me to be is about letting myself know it's okay to be good at the thing that I'm good at and not as good at the things that I'm not good at. That is totally okay. Not to have all this pressure on you to be the game machine, be the ninja, be the pirate, be the straight man. That you can drive yourself crazy if you try to be everything.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you do in the beginning when they're taking classes, right? I think we all have that mental breakdown when we're like, I can't be wise, I can't be
I didn't shake that until recently, and I've been doing improv since summer of 2013, like regularly. So, I mean, and it wasn't the team I'm on, there are a couple of people who play very similarly, and they're phenomenal at it. And it's something I'm just not good at. I admire it. I wish I could do it. But it wasn't until recently when I said, oh, this is more like a basketball team where you have a point guard, a shooting guard, a power forward, a small forward, and a center. They're not playing the same role.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And I think if you dive into that on a team, that's where the magic will happen. That will elevate you to the next level. Mm-hmm. And that's why that's why you play differently on every team too. At least I do. I mean, I definitely have been doing a lot more straight manning on this team, which is really fun for me to do. Because everybody can play everything on this team. But before, I would be the one that would always start with the crazy energy and then see what would happen after that. So that's why I love being on a bunch of different teams at once to practice all those things.
Well, it's like it sounds like Women and Men is a team of LeBrons or Magic Johnsons, where those are people who can play every one of those positions.
I think that comparison is hilarious for an improv team, but yeah, I'll take it. A bunch of
because it's an athletic reference.
A bunch of tiny little white boys and girls are the LeBrons. Sure.
Well, I just mean that both of those players have played all the positions in the same game before, so I'm sure there's some stat head who's totally disagreeing with that on LeBron, but just get the point that I'm making. And let's move forward.
Stat heads.
But sincerely, I think that is something that people need to get out of their head about, because there are all these different positions that you have to play within a scene, and you just want to grow at being able to do the skills needed in that position.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's not a bad thing to do. I think when you're first going through classes, I guess that is the time to have like a mental breakdown about who you are and what you're good at, and because you're jealous of all the other people you see in your classes who things just come naturally to. But the good news is once you're out of those classes and you find your groove, no one else can do what Jason does. No one else can do what Molly does. No one else can do what, Ferguson does. He's so good at it. Ferguson is so good at what he does. So just dive into that after that and don't feel bad about just...
That's
if you're
so
really
encouraging.
Good at that's the number one thing I wish I would have learned earlier, just to be okay with what you're good at.
Yeah. I'm just coming out of a workshop that I took with Brian O'Connell, and he was saying in that workshop the same thing you just said, that not like you are the best at something in the entire world. There's something that you do that no one else in the world can do. All of you are better than Will Ferrell at whatever it is that makes you you.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so necessary to hear, because when I started getting into comedy, one of the things that maybe even kept me from getting into comedy was I would look at a Chris Farley or a Will Ferrell or a Kristen Wiig and be like, well, I can't do that. So why bother?
I know. I think we all do that, right? But it's the different, like, no one's going to do the same scene the same way. Like whenever we find ourselves in scenes that we've seen before, I think we shit on ourselves a little bit and like, oh God, I'm stuck in another whatever this scene is. But as the person watching, it's always different every time. Like I could watch an infinite amount of good cop, bad cop scenes.
Yeah.
With whoever is doing it, because it's always different. There's always a new twist on it.
Right.
So it's
We're
just
not seeing
letting
anything
yourself.
new now. We're still watching the shows and movies and improv scenes, and everything's been done before.
Yeah.
The reason we keep watching this stuff is because these new combinations create something new that we haven't quite seen before.
Yeah, I swear. I think everybody should do good cop, bad cop scenes in every show. They're my guilty pleasure.
I do enjoy those myself. I would like to know a little bit more, pick your brain a little bit more about the sort of approach that you take, because it sounds like being at UCB, you're running a lot of drills to get good at the game, as you were saying earlier, but you are still someone who approaches a scene with what's my physicality and what does this mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how does that work into a game center? Because I feel like that's how I am, but I'm on a team it's an Armando team, which has to be game centered in order for it to be successful. But I am one who wants to come out and have this like grounded actory scene. So how do you get into that?
Well, I love starting from the physical, because if you give if you're going to do the same scene anyway, why not give him a tick or a different physical way of moving? Because that will inform your scene in a different way for sure. It'll just give the character a little more grounding, a little more nuance, a little more point of view that you would not have given that character if he was just sitting straight at a desk doing a regular interview. Right. Say that guy you're playing the boss and he's got something on his face and he's trying to get it off, or he's got something in his teeth. That scene is going to go he's low status because of that. And you probably wouldn't have thought of that the second you started doing that, but that's what the scene would turn into. So that just gives something right from the get-go, something for you to have a hold of and something to put some good grounding and footing for your scene to go off of. So it's just like one of my safety blankets, one of my tools in my improv tool belt.
That's a really good one.
Yeah, I don't know. Everybody doesn't do it. It's really, it's like a cheat code, I think, a little bit.
I think it is. It adds a color to the scene that maybe wouldn't have been there otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
I was just
talking to surprise yourself.
Yeah, I was just talking to somebody earlier about how, and I think I may have done this. I don't remember now that time has happened, and you know how an idea or a thought that you had after time just becomes like, oh, did that really happen? It's like, no, it's just a thing. I don't know. I don't remember if I actually did this, but it seems like there was some scene where I walked out like some slob, some like Homer Simpson archetype, but then someone said Mr. President, and so I straightened up and got like presidential. I shouldn't have done that. Like, what would have been great if I really did that? What would have been great is if I was that slobby president.
Exactly. I mean, you have your game right there before after the first line, you have it, because your gift to your scene partner was your physicality already.
Right.
So you've got a game built in. Yeah, it makes it easy. It's a cheat code for sure.
That's bailing. Do you think this is bailing on what you had at the beginning?
For sure. Yeah. Especially if you change your physicality, the whole audience can see you do that. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it's hard to commit to what you did, but it's also, it can make the scene easier and wonderful. I mean, half of the most fun scenes come out of like mess ups and justifications for the script.
Yeah.
So that's what I love. But going back to like practicing that, I guess it totally depends on the opening that you're doing. So I mostly do Harold's these days, but so we've been fiddling with our opening at first. When I first came on the team, we were doing just a fast-paced scene montage in the beginning of like sort of unrelated scenes, because the Women to Men is definitely like a very fast-paced team.
Very fluid. It's harder to see the structure. Not that that's a good thing.
Yeah, and that's something we really enjoy playing with, like thematically and things like that. But recently, we just started performing with no opening, which gives a ton of room for doing character stuff. And I think starting now and for a little while, we're going to do 3 scenes up top where we just straight up, based on the suggestion, no opening, do a grounded 2-person scene, which, I mean, those are my favorite, because if you just stand there and stare at each other, you've got nothing to go off of before you start speaking. So when you have a no opening, you're definitely forced to use physicality to inform the scene. But like we were just talking about, when you do have premise-based openings, a scene that would just be a good cop and a bad cop would become like, I don't know, if you're very articulate with your hand gestures, it would become like good cop, Greek cop or something like that. And you see, there's always a twist on the premise. You don't want to just, I mean, sometimes you want, if it's a really funny one, you want to take it straight from the opening, but most of the time you want to do a little twist on it. So there's always room for physicality, and interesting stage picture is another thing that I'm a huge proponent of. Just moving your body to a place on the stage that you normally don't people see come from a lot will change the entire dynamic of the scene and the show.
It does. I feel like I see a lot of improv where people are not comfortable with the space enough to do what you're suggesting. And what you're suggesting is the right thing to do, but people just kind of walk out into the middle scared, and they haven't, you know, they may call it, oh, we're in a coffee shop, or, oh, we're in the kitchen, but they're still just standing there, so you can't tell by their physicality where they are.
Yeah. I mean, it's because you don't think you have permission yet to do that.
Exactly.
You know, it's like Hunter Nelson on my team. It's so funny. He always enters scenes from like the left vom of the theater, so that's at the top of the stage. And that is so funny to me because it implies status too. If you come from the audience, I think it gives you sort of a powerful status, like you're parting the seas. So a lot of his characters come from that. So I think if you just try out whatever theater stage you're on, try coming from a different door than you normally do, or taking up space in a way that you normally don't. You know, weight and heat is a real thing. If you stand with your shoulders water and out like this, you cannot help but improvise differently and surprise yourself. And those, I mean, a lot of, I'd say so most of the of what we do in improv comes from the subconscious. So if you just start moving in a different way and moving to different places, you're going to do half of the work for yourself to get yourself out of your own fucking brain. Anything you can do to get out of your brain helps, I think. And those are my little cheat codes, really.
I completely agree. And one of the things I realized, though, is a lot of times I'll hear this stuff and I'm like, yes, that's totally true and that's totally correct. And so I try to do that in a scene, but the other person, or sometimes I'm that other person who's screwing it up. But so I say sometimes, most of the time. But sincerely, these things that we're talking about, they work when everyone is aware of everything that's going on. Someone can walk out and they don't realize how they're standing. So we're talking about heat and weight. When someone doesn't realize that stuff on a conscious level, then when the other person who is being more conscious in the scene is picking up on it and using it, it's like a dead end almost.
Well, that's a time when you can, I mean, I would give your scene partner a gift. One of my favorite exercises to do is where you just notice what your scene partner is doing and calling it out. Be like, hey, I see that you're really nervous right now. And I call it damn right. The person emphatically has to say, damn right I'm nervous, and then justify that. And then you notice something else that they did in there, and you're like, I just noticed that you talked for a while. Do you feel really defensive right now? Damn right I'm defensive. Because it's like the hardest yes you can give, and the scenes always go in these hilarious places. And it's a physical yes anding as well as and the justification comes along with you. So that's one of my favorite ones to do to get people out of their heads, because you're allowed to do that in an improv scene. Be like, I see that you're just like standing really still right now. Or is there something that's bothering you? Then they have to respond. I mean, they say don't ask questions, basically just for your first couple of classes, so you don't totally screw everything up. After that, I love asking questions in scenes, especially when you're on a team of people that you trust and that you got hard listeners on. It can actually help the scene a lot, I think. So,
and I've heard the talk about respond to the intent of what is said or done, not necessarily exactly what is said. So, I mean, they say don't ask questions because you don't, if I'm doing a scene with Molly and I keep making you do all the work, the creative work, then by asking questions, then I'm screwing the scene. But if I'm doing what you're suggesting right now, saying like, hey, I'm noticing this, what's up? Then we're connecting and you are yes-anding the intent of that statement, which is to point out where you're at.
Yeah, exactly. I think that can totally help.
That's us getting on the same page, which is exactly what needs to happen just about every moment in an improv scene.
Yeah,
getting on or staying on the same page.
And the sooner you can do that, the more fun you can have in the space, just to explore.
What are some things people miss that, like, especially early improvisers, when it comes to doing successful improv scenes?
One of the main things I just see is just keeping it simple and really, really stupid. I mean, don't try to be smart. If there's a higher intellectual meaning that can be placed on your scene, the audience will do that for you. Don't. That's why my favorite scenes in the whole world are group game scenes. Group games are essentially 2-person scenes with more people. So usually what happens is someone will initiate, and then the second thing that is said usually becomes the game, because you do not have time to sift through 8 people's views of what's going on. You'll see when you watch group games, especially on Harold Night here, at least, people physically jump on it, and the game is usually created within the first couple lines. And that is my favorite, because they say simple and stupid out of necessity.
Right.
And then we blow it out from there immediately. So.
That is something that I have a team that I coach that is a Harold team, and the group games, that seems to be the hardest nut to crack. What are some good basic things to get on the same page about so that they can have the most success and the most fun with a group game?
My 2 things are an interesting stage picture to start, for sure.
Gosh, yeah. I hate that half circle that people make. And they just stand there like, who stands like this at any point in time?
That's a hard and fast rule. You're just not allowed to do that. And then going through all the different kinds that you normally see, just so people know in their back pocket, presentational, commercial, odd man out, 2-person scene, basically. But then forcing them to do it like it is a 2-person scene. The first 2 viewpoints that were expressed are going to be what you're going to play. Like some of the examples that come to my head are on my old team coworkers. We were all out on stage, and one of Paul Ladero came out and looked at all of us and said, "Okay, it's time to pick my bridesmaids." And just by saying it like that and the way that he did, the rest of the scene was us just manically running around the theater, screaming, so excited to find out who he was going to pick. So just not even just like very little talking in group games. Just be physical, connect with your friends and your teammates, and get sweaty. Those are my favorite kinds, for sure. And I think that'll really help to get people out of their heads. It's like dance time, and you look around, you see you have to turn around and look at your scene partners in a group game to see what they're doing. Because even in the way that they're standing, you guys have to physically get on the same page immediately first. Because if you're all over the map, it's going to be harder to justify that. So if you really connect with each other too and pick a similar physical position, you're already almost there. You've got half your game.
That's awesome. That's very good advice. And I appreciate it. What I saw Women and Men, I love that whole night. All the teams are so great and different. There's like this varying picture and styles of doing Harolds on Harold Night there. For Women and Men, it's not that it was, well, I guess it was kind of organic. It did seem like it was harder to say, like, okay, is this, where are they in the show? Like, it was just harder to do that. So I just paid attention and enjoyed it. I stopped trying to figure it out.
Yeah, that's definitely Women and Men. We like our shows to be super fluid.
They so were.
Good. I don't want to say, yeah. I guess we're less concerned with where we are in what scene and more concerned with what is going to be most interesting to play and what connections we can make and what thematically would best serve the show as a whole, rather than being like, where are we? What scene is it?
Is this
And
2A or 2B?
yeah, I remember when I first started watching Harold, I didn't know what the fuck was going on anyway.
Right.
Before I knew what the structure was. So I would like to just know that if someone didn't know what the Herald was anyway, they would see where connections were and what the themes were overall. So if you can do that, it's successful. But some student may be like, they didn't do it right, and they would be absolutely right. Some shows.
What is the structure? Does it have that like 1A, 1B, 1C group game, 2A, 2B?
So on Harold Night, we're definitely supposed to hit all of those. I enjoy doing everything from the opening up until the second group game. I like when the initiation from the second group game comes from within the Herald, because that is an awesome jumping off point to get into third beats. And a lot of the times with women and men too, we're running out of time by the second group game. So third beats are often really quick if they happen at all. So yeah, that's just my favorite thing to do. I mean, sometimes we take it from an opening too, if the opening had something really juicy in it that we wanted to jump on. And I personally like to put in my back pocket anything from the opening that would be a great setting for a group game. If it's like, a pirate ship came up or whatever, I try to save those for the group games. But so yes, technically I do love hitting all the marks, but I'm at the point now where it doesn't bother me if we miss a scene. And like that happens in rehearsal all the time. And then afterwards we'll be like, oh, did we mix them up? But nobody cares.
Right. I think the training wheels is just to help people just figure out and understand the idea or the process of a Herald. But first beats are just going to be like this, and second beats are referencing things from the first beats, essentially. What is the thought process when you're creating scenes in first beats?
I think the best thing for me is just creating a full world. Who, what, where, for sure. I know we all know we're supposed to do that, but I'm like, oh shit, I didn't even give myself a name or my partner a name. You get so caught up in finding the game sometimes that the who, what, where goes to the wayside. So I think names are another cheat code. Just have that in your back pocket at all times.
Why do you think names are important?
Because it's like physicality. If you call your scene partner Steve, it's going to be a different scene than if you call him Skullcap or, Bone Thug or whatever.
That's very true.
But also sometimes I'm like, once I do name someone, I'm like, fuck, what the hell did I name him?
I do that all the time. I was just hearing in the workshop I had, because there was a scene where two people really had just clear points of view, real clear characters. So he stopped the scene and said, do we know their names? And then does it matter? And we were kind of like, yeah, no, it doesn't really matter in this particular case, because if someone's acting like a skullcap, maybe you don't need to name them skullcap because they're already doing that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. There's only so many things you can juggle at once.
Exactly. Yeah, that's fair. So when you're trying to create a world in your first beats, are you trying to come up with a game, a specific type of game, so that the second beat version of that scene plays that game?
Yeah, I like to keep the first beats usually pretty simple, because second beats, for me, the easiest way to blow that out of the water is just make it bigger physically. So, if I do make a physical choice in the first one, I'm not concerned with getting like sweaty in the first scene or anything. Just really understanding who these characters are and their points of view. If you get the points of view out, usually that becomes a game. But if anything, if you don't get to a solid game, at least you've got, masculine father and like feminine son or whatever doesn't want to take over the business. At least, like, that's not a game, and that's stupid, and I have done that scene recently.
But the second beat of that could be like the alpha male boss and the beta vice president that can't take over the company because he's too beta, not alpha enough or something.
Right.
Like that.
And then maybe you'll find the game in the second scene there. So as long as you have
That
two points of
dynamic.
view,
Right.
for sure, then you have something to play with in your second beat of that.
And you're doing that by trying to keep it simple, but make it a full world and in full space.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I like to always give my point of view and emotion around it too. Because that just easily implies status, and that gives you even more to play with. My characters are usually low status and nervous. That's pretty clear to my scene mate that they can take the high status. They're just more interesting to me.
So we've kind of already talked about this, but in second beats, what do you think is the UCB approach?
UCB approach, I mean, second beats, whatever your favorite style of heightening is, do that, because there's so many different ways you can do it. You can do analogous or time jump. And when I was on my team, Rizzo, my Lloyd team, where I learned the most about Harold's ever, one of my coaches was Ben Ramika, who really...
I love Ben.
Oh, God, he's so great. And he really solidified for me what I love about second beats, because sometimes, like I said, you don't get to third beats, and a lot of times third beats can just be interesting connections or side characters that you didn't see before. So he would have all of us come out and we would be sweaty by the time second beats were over, and I love that style, because by the time you get to second beats, everybody on the back line should be on their toes, ready to jump in to make that pyramid, to build that whatever, at least emotionally heightened too. That's my favorite. I like to get sweaty in my second beats. That's the energy I like to bring to it. But there's, of course, sometimes when you take the same characters that take that game just to a different location, that can sometimes heighten the game in itself. So there's simple ways, but whatever you find funny, do that scene. Don't think in your head. The thing that screwed me up for a long time was, what is the correct second beat to do here?
Right. I think that screws up a lot of people. Definitely screwed up me. I'm sure I've inadvertently screwed up my team with it. The Harold teams I've coached with that.
Yeah, I mean, it gets you in your head, and who doesn't want to see someone having the most fun they've ever had? A scene's not going to be bad if you're having fun,
Right.
Half the time I play Lin-Manuel Miranda in my second beats just because I want to, okay? And it may not fit every time, but hell if I don't have a shitload of fun, and the audience has...
I gotta say, I've never seen Hamilton, and the first time I saw Lin-Manuel on Fallon, I was kind of like, I don't know about this guy. And then I so got on board pretty immediately with how amazing Lin-Manuel Miranda is.
Amazing.
I adore him, and I want to be his best friend.
Oh, God. And let me tell you, he comes up in improv scenes all the time. I love seeing my teammates do what they're good at, too. Like Sarah Grace's crotchety old man is the funniest thing I've ever seen. Watching her do that gives me joy and gives the audience joy. So do what brings you joy. And, like I said, you want to be a well-rounded player. But if you're so good at that thing, bring it back. See how it fits,
Are there any other crucial things that you would say need to be done in second beats in order to have successful second beats?
You know what? A lot of times second beats are cleaning up first beats too.
How do you mean?
So I mean, if you didn't find a game in the first scene, which happens a lot, it's just solidifying that. So really, I mean, your second beats are going to be a lot of times the meat of your show. So for me, I do love Chicago style, but I'm such a performer at heart that I'm like, whatever, just perform the fuck out of your second beats. Give yourself a little ease and time and space in first beats to like
figure it out.
Scene partner, figure it out. And just make a decision before you go out in second beats of what you want this to be, and perform the fuck out of it. This is theater, and you should be honored to be doing it in front of an audience. So
I couldn't agree more.
A show in second beats, yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that you're saying that, because it's how I feel, and I like it when people who are really good are saying things that I think. Because I'm like, oh, great, I wasn't wrong this whole time.
No, you're not wrong.
How do you approach third beats?
If I get to them. Third beats are actually, I like to think of them as a grab bag. I mean, ideally, early on, it would just be like another heightening, but there's so much, usually generate so much fun stuff that you don't get to play with, that bringing that extraneous stuff into the games that you've established, that's what I love to see. And the audience loves it too. They're like, oh my God, I forgot about that guy.
Yeah.
No, just really have fun with that. And then,
It's like
whoever,
a button where it all just comes together.
yeah. And then you got to have that guy or girl on your team, the Mr. or Mrs. Blackout line. The person that, when that person's about to have a blackout line when they walk out on stage and they turn to the audience and they turn out and they go, blah, 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 blackout. I love that moment.
Those are great. Those are great moments.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's so much talk and focus on second beats in improv, or just like second. I mean, like Armandos are essentially just all second beats. Mm-hmm. You're referencing a story. You're taking something from that. So when you're doing a second beat, you're kind of briefly going back to talking about second beats. You're sort of thinking about the things that were interesting and the game, if there was a game, from that first beat that you're doing a scene off of.
Right. Yeah.
You're kind of playing with whatever was there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Second beats to me are the most fun, and I shouldn't say most fun, because I do love those patient up top scenes. But yeah, really, because you have time when you're on the back line during first beats to think about what's going to happen, which is really cool. You don't have that luxury in your first scenes. So there's a little bit more pressure to perform and to nail the game. So it's an interesting dynamic, and especially because, I mean, it depends on every team, but in a lot of teams you can take somebody else's second beat, which I really enjoy, because once you do your scene, you don't want to immediately get in the back line and be like, okay, where should I set that? Blah blah blah. So I love being on teams where they say anybody can take them, and so if somebody steps out confidently for your second beat, let them take it and let it ride, and then everybody can jump on that. I kind of like thinking of second beats as group game scenes. A lot of times, women and men, literally every scene is a group game, from the first beat to the.
I think that was some of the reason why I was like, "Where is this a second group game?"
Yeah, it's hard to tell because we all jump in immediately, because it's just so fun. It's hard not to. So if you can make that work, yeah, that's definitely an option too. So I just love having the energy of everybody in the scene, but that's not an easy thing to do, I guess.
Outside of Harold's doing that form of improv, are there other styles of improv that you're getting yourself into regularly that you really love?
Whenever I have the chance, I am one of those people that will sit in a bit for hours, like way too long. I just love sitting in those weird characters, because I live in New York and they're very, very real to me every day. These people you see on the subway, you're just like, I couldn't have even conjured this kind of character if I tried, so I'm really loving diving into character work and cultivating all those notes that you have on your cell phone. One day you will get to them. So I like to write, to take notes of all the people I see.
It's the best place to people watch.
Oh my God, Jason, it's fantastic. It's just so wonderful. Everywhere you look is inspiration for another character. So I guess because, UCB style of game is so quick, so fast, it is nice to just sit in the bones of a character. So I'm doing that. And then, of course, I have my sketch team with a show at UCB now that I'm loving doing, because we're in the show is called Balls Deep, and we play men in every scene, and there's scenes about rape culture, white male privilege. We cover the whole thing, like internet trolls. And now with the election that just happened, as you might know, we're always in the process of tweaking those scenes, and that's what I'm really, really enjoying. You guys should come check it out. So yeah, character work. I think everybody, UCB as a theater has been encouraging us outside of improv to really dive into character work. I think 2 years ago at DCM at the all theater meeting, they really, really stressed that. So I think that's been a big focus.
Oh, very cool.
Mm-hmm.
I hear so many people who are not on Harold teams or maybe not on house teams at all at UCB who will talk about like, oh gosh, the politics is staying on. The office politics is getting on a house team and staying on a house team are just unreal. I'm just warning you, and it's so tough, and it's just so cutthroat and all this stuff. But then whenever I talk to people, and I'm seeing this now, everyone seems so laid back. So what is this culture that people are hearing about, but I am not witnessing when I meet the actual performers?
Yeah, well, I think we've all felt that at different stages of our improv career. It's different for everybody at different times, how they feel about it. I had to audition multiple times, and I was also put on a team and then cut. So if you would have asked me when I was cut, like how I felt about it, probably wouldn't be great. Actually, but when I was cut, I did feel like I needed to be cut because I wasn't doing my best work. I remember when they were making the phone calls, I was like, if they call me and say that I'm still on, I will have no respect for them. I just wasn't doing good work. And you need to know, you need to have self-awareness to know when you need to do more work. And because I get in slumps all the time too. And I was definitely I was like, I feel like I need to take more classes or at least get more comfortable with the stage and have more confidence in myself before I get on a team.
I don't necessarily fault that approach at all to a theater. I think that's totally fine. I understand that some people that's not going to be the best thing for them. Maybe that's not their atmosphere, but it's totally legitimate for a company to say, okay, I just feel like you're not doing your best work. And this, we want to cast shows based on people who are the strongest. And there are an abundant amount of people who are the strongest here. So there are only going to be 12 of you on a team max,
Yeah,
probably not even that many. But
yeah, the sheer volume of talent at UCB is utterly astounding. And I mean, I could be replaced by hundreds of other people who would be probably so much better than me. But it was just luck and time. And, so I can only speak to my experience. And I'm just... I had to work hard and keep doing it. And,
that sounds terrible. You had to work hard and keep doing it and grow and progress as a person. Isn't that why we're doing this stuff? Is that we're trying to be better people with the process or through the process of growing and progressing as people and performers.
Right. Yeah, and there are so many ways to do that too. I was lucky enough that I had the money also to take the classes.
Right.
So it's definitely my privilege for sure that got me here. So it is there's a lot of frustrating things about it. But, of course, like everybody always says.
What valuable thing doesn't have frustrations?
Yeah, totally. But especially if you're in New York, there are so many other theaters cropping up and so many different creative outlets to become better at comedy that it's, one of the best things I did to make myself a better comedian is start my own sketch group because it got me writing for myself and had me dive deeper into characters that I love to do. And then made me more confident as an improviser. And that had nothing to do with any theater whatsoever. So I would just say early, pick your friends that you think are funny and start making comedy with them.
What you just mentioned is exactly the advice Seth Meyers gave me when I went to a taping and he took a Q&A. And I said, I'm moving up here with my girlfriend. We want to do comedy. What do you suggest? And he said, get in a theater. Get in a theater and surround yourself with good people that you like and do stuff together. That's what it's going to take.
Oh, they're the best people. And the cutest boys, Jason. I just got to say, go to the theater with the cutest boys and you'll find your way. It's arbitrary, but at least you're just picking and making a decision.
You coach. What all are you coaching?
One of my favorite teams that I was coaching was this all ladies team, which was so fun for me because there's so much talent. It's just overwhelming. Sometimes I'd watch them and be like, okay, I quit. You guys just take over.
What was their name?
What?
What's the team's name?
It wasn't a team. It was just like on Sundays they would get a bunch of women together from the community. So sometimes it'd be like 20 people. And a lot of times we would just sometimes sit down and have a discussion if there was something going on in the community, which I really, really loved, getting to know other girls because I'm not really entrenched in the student community anymore. So it's good to know what's going on and different issues because, stuff has come up in this past year. So just like getting their takes on it and staying involved with them. It's just overwhelming how funny these people are to me. So it's good to laugh while you're coaching, and I definitely did a lot of that. I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How much coaching have you done?
I have stopped doing it as much recently just because my job has gotten bananas with this election year. But coaching keeps you fresh and reminds you of what good improv is, because you can get spoiled when you're on the same team for a while. You just start falling into old habits. So you remember, oh yes, you need to justify, you need the who, what, and where, and it's selfish, but it's good for me too. So I like
sometimes taking a 101 is beneficial again. Like just auditing a 101 is like, oh yeah, these basics I totally forgot about.
Hell yeah. I just signed up for another UCB class. Shannon O'Neill is teaching it called Suck My Dick. It's an all-lady class. If you can tell, I'm really into all-lady stuff. And so that we've only had one class, but I'm already so pumped about it. It's so energizing. It's reminding me about good scene work. Because, a lot of times on Women and Men, and when you're on a Harold team for a while, you start working on like loftier goals.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, right, I haven't done my who, what, where in like 3 Harolds. So it's definitely good to go back to basics because you can get spoiled and forget.
Yeah. I mean, where you're doing the more rule breaking stuff that comes with experience, then you can kind of forget the rules anyway.
I just forgot them. Yeah. So it's really good.
Well, good deal. I feel like we've gotten to a good ending point. Now it's time to create something together.
Woo!
We've talked about a lot of things. What's something that we could do together here at the end? I mentioned off air about kind of running drills of something, but is there anything that's come to mind to you since we started talking?
I don't know. Since I'm such a physical player, I'm wondering what I can do over the audio.
That's a good point. Well, what's something that we were talking about? Oh, okay. Maybe here you like to start scenes with a physicality, and I imagine you're also trying to pick up on the other person's physicality. So maybe we can go step by step through that process.
Sure.
Okay, so we don't necessarily have to do a scene, but I just want to get a peek into your brain when you're going into that scene.
Sure. Okay.
Sometimes people jump right out and they just start talking. What is your approach? Your approach is to walk out a certain way, or to get into the scene. Like, what am I feeling and how am I standing?
Okay, so we start a scene. I'm probably gonna walk in with my hips swinging. One of my favorite characters to play is like an old Southern drunk lady who's hitting on everybody. And so you can basically tell what that character is before I even open my mouth, correct? So then probably the first thing you would notice is say, I noticed you look kind of drunk. My favorite, the hard yes thing is, damn right I'm drunk. Your father left the liquor cabinet open. He forgot to lock it this weekend when he went out of town. And then, of course, you would notice something about that. Be like, oh, you seem really excited that he's out of town. Damn right I'm excited he's out of town. Mama's got to get hers this weekend.
What's going through your head from if we're doing a scene together and you're observing me? What is it? And even if I am being kind of like the straight person to your, damn right I'm drunk type, what are you trying to pick up on so that you can utilize it in how you respond?
Well, this is a fun one because it's mostly gift giving from one side. And so there's pressure off of you.
Right.
And there's also pressure off of me because you're doing, your straight man is just noticing things about me. So once you give me that gift, I'm off and running because you could notice a bunch of different things about me, but you're going to pick one.
Right.
the first thing you could have noticed is that you seem really confident. You can be confident or drunk, two things that go hand in hand. But my answer is going to be different based on what you point out.
So it's kind of like you are doing something, and what's said. If you are walking out in a hippie sort of way, whatever you say after that should confirm what everyone just saw you do.
Yes, exactly. And you're going to naturally heighten from there, too. If you notice that I'm drunk, damn right I'm drunk, I'm going to create more of that physically, right? I'm going to knock things over in the apartment. I'm going to get drunker. If you point out that I'm confident, I'm going to, puff up my chest and talk real great about myself. The scene is going to go in a different direction. It's going to heighten automatically just from what you pick and because of the nature of going forward in the scene.
Cool.
I love my drunk, confident lady.
If we're talking heat and weight, so maybe we're not coming out as a drunk, confident lady, and it's not going to be like a straight absurd sort of scene, like where it's a straight person and then the character-y person. What is the process there? What's going through your head? We're both coming out.
Oh, yeah, hopefully you both come out and like observe each other's weight and heat, and then the first thing I notice with weight and heat is that status is usually established, and there's more of a vibration around the characters, so less talking is needed. And I think when you come out with weight and heat, you can use the space more to your benefit than just being like blah blah blah, let's try to find the game with our words.
Let's define weight and heat too, because it's something that where I'm from, I don't hear a lot of that in my improv community, though I've read about it a good bit and love it, but I haven't practiced it. And a lot of people who are my friends here, they maybe don't know as well.
To me, weight and heat is just a way of placing in your body the vibrations of your character. That may, I hope that makes sense. But so
would heat be kind of like maybe the heat between us, the feeling between us?
Yeah, absolutely, totally. If there's fire, there's going to be lots of passion. If it's a little colder, you're going to be more isolated, further away than the person on stage. And you can. So that's definitely a part of that immediately gets you and your partner interacting, and you can have different heats to each other.
And the weight is kind of like maybe the weightiness of the moment that these two are sharing.
Yeah, totally, and that can come. Once you've established the scene, you feel the weight of the scene. But before you've even started talking, to me, weight a lot is placement in your own body of where your confidence is. Say your confidence is this ball right here. It could be big and heavy and sit here, and that's going to affect you a different way than if it's in your pelvis. You're going to be this guy. I know you can't see me right now, but the weight can be wherever you place it in your body, and that will affect your character.
Right.
And then.
So if you're putting it in your shoulders and making you kind of slouch, if you're slouching, then you're kind of giving an idea to your scene partner of like, well, this is how this person is feeling, maybe. Right,
totally. It gives them a sense of themselves, And so I think as an overall concept, weight and heat, when you think about it, just think about it in terms of what your character feels about yourself and towards the other person, and where you place that in your body. The body, that's why I love weight and heat, because it immediately connects your character to your body and how the warmth is in it, and how you feel the weight. If you ever take mime or anything like that, you have to get a sense of the weight of the object that you're holding in order to infer what it is and the importance that it has. And so just place that in your body, and it's the same thing. And you're giving your gift to your scene partner without any words telling them who you are a little bit.
Well, there it is. I love it. Thanks so much for talking to me about this and being on the podcast.
For sure. This was so fun.
So glad I had Molly on. She is so fun and funny. She's a good egg, and she is one of the most dynamic performers I've ever seen. So I hope you learned a lot. I certainly did, listening to her talk about her approach to improv. If you want to know more about her, you can go to the UCB Performer page. It is in the bio, a link for that. And also find out more about her sketch group, Buzz Off Lucille, at buzzofflucille.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at Molly Gaebe, at There It Is Pod, at Jason Farr Jokes. If you are in New York, you can go see her perform tomorrow night, November 30th, at the UCB Theater on West 23rd Street. She is going to be on Night Late, which is a very interesting show where some late night talk show writers develop a show around a new host for each show. So check that out. That's going to be a lot of fun if you're in New York City, or if you're independently wealthy and can just travel up there on a whim. Do that. Follow us on Twitter at Molly Gaebe, at There It Is Pod, at Jason Farr Jokes. Also go to thereitispod.com. You can find out how to support the podcast, which I would very much appreciate. Very fun episode next week. Until next time, be good to each other.
The music for the theme song was created by Neil Brooks. The rap was written and performed by Nick Acevedo. The logo for There It Is was created by Jeff Prater. The There It Is podcast is produced by Jason Farr.